Okay, you ready?
No.
Okay, we're going to take notes. I hope this works. I'm trying. If not, at least I'll have the PowerPoint up there for you. I've already put this up. Okay? But I'd rather have you pay attention and write down some notes while we talk. Okay? Like I said, this is very important because let me make sure that camera's seeing the video, the TV. Yes, it is. Okay. Okay, like I said, it's real important. This is an important time in history because of two important things. First, because Christianity had such a major impact on Western civilization. And two, because of the massive contrast, spiritual contrast between Christian teaching and Christian understanding and the Rome's understanding of the world. Both of them came into existence at roughly the same time. Christianity, you'll see how the dates align, but Christianity rises in the Roman Empire. So Augustine or Octavius come in to play at the same time as Jesus and his disciples. So they both are kind of birthed at the same time. One from the empire is birthed out of the Republic, and Christianity is birthed out of Judaism. Both of them come into existence at roughly the same time, and then they spend 5 centuries smashing up against each other in surprising ways. So we're going to talk about that contrast because in a very real way, it's the same contrast that's going on today if you think of it as spiritual. The same spiritual conflict is going on today. We have some political institutions, arguably, that have learned how to deal with the difference between religion and government. Okay? However, the Rome didn't have that. So I want to just set that up for you just a little bit before we go into Christianity. You saw the chaos. What was some of the chaos that you saw in Rome, in the Republic? Just give me a couple of things. Someone, yes.
How people were starting to less follow, like, I can't remember.
The Mos Maiorum?
Yeah, they were starting to not follow that as much, and then with, like, all the new military stuff.
Okay, all the military changed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I get rid of that password?
If you want to, yeah. What else changed? You had military, the Marian reforms, and the Mos Maiorum, and the ethics, the Roman ethics. What else was putting pressure on Rome? Give me one or two more things that we saw. Why were the military reforms causing problems?
It was getting rid of the middle class.
It was destroying the middle class, okay? And it was because Rome was expanding so much, okay? And a lot of wealth was coming back to Rome, but it was in the hands of a few people. And also the Greek influence, remember? We talked a little bit about the Greek influence. So all of these things are just challenging the Republic, and it goes through a lot of civil wars and chaos. And then the computer goes dead. Okay. Very good. Okay, then the computer goes dead. I'm going to leave it like that just so it does. Okay, then the computer goes dead. No, then the Republic is destroyed, right?
I want to make sure it's still recording.
It isn't?
This is not. You weren't recording.
It's in photo booth.
I know it's in photo booth, but photo booth was there, and now there it is.
It's still recording.
Yeah, thank you though, Matt, because I wouldn't have thought of that. Appreciate it. Okay, anyway, the Roman Empire rose out of the instability and chaos from the Roman Republic. And what Augustine was trying to do is think, how can I have the good parts of Rome without the chaos and without the problems, and build a real empire. So he spent the first part of his effort destroying his opponents from the second triumvirate. Okay? Then, once he collectivized power in his own hands, he had to build institutions that he thought would help the government sustain itself and prevent some of the chaos that it had just gone through. And one of his inventions, which wasn't really an invention, it had been practiced for thousands of years, is that he made himself to some degree divine. Okay? A divine emperor. Now, he saw himself initially as just a citizen amongst citizens, the first citizen, the most important citizen. And he insinuated divinity. Later emperors would claim full divinity. Okay? The reason was he wanted to be the center of the Roman Empire so that the empire had some place to stop. When the buck stops here. If the emperor says no, it's no. Okay, there's no arguing with the emperor. Okay? And he thought this would prevent squabbles and struggles and civil conflicts in the empire. It didn't. But he was trying to. It may have a little bit. But the tendency was for the Romans to hold up the emperor as really, really divine. Okay? They were polytheistic, so that was a little irrational. But they were still, the emperor's word goes. Okay? They also allowed every culture, like you know, they allowed every culture to do their own religion, to do their own gods. They didn't have a problem with you as long as you paid your taxes and you didn't create instability in Rome. So he continued that practice. Then also he outlawed, this is going to surprise you probably, but he outlawed adultery. Why do you think he would outlaw adultery? If the president outlawed adultery tomorrow in America, there would probably be a massive uproar. But he did it way back at the beginning of the empire, because he saw the Roman family as the fabric, the foundation of the Roman stability. And he saw it being pulled down by infidelity between husbands and wives. You can come in, yes. So he wanted to make sure that the Roman government was strong because the Roman families were strong. And he made it illegal. In fact, they punished people very harshly who did it. And his daughter didn't like him. And his daughter was also an adulterer. And he warned her a couple of times, and then finally he had her exiled to an island off of Rome. So he exiled his own daughter because she was breaking the law that he held up against adultery. Okay? Even though he was breaking the law, but he was divine, so he could get away with it. Okay? But he was trying to establish some stability in the Roman Empire. And for 200 years he does. You will see that. Yes?
Was it kind of like the pharaohs of Egypt, where they're considered like a spiritual figure or god, like along with the other gods?
Exactly like that. And who before him? Nebuchadnezzar, Darius.
Yeah.
All of them tended to reach back to some sort of divinity to give them authority. That's just the truth, okay? So that's what he was trying to do. He was going off things he had learned from history, the very things you all have been studying. Isn't it interesting to think that Augustine and Cicero, they all studied the same things you've been studying. I always think of that. People I used to know when I heard a song that are no longer living, ever go back and hear songs? Well, now I hear songs from like the 70s and the 80s and the 60s, and I go, wow, my mom used to listen to that, but she's not here anymore. Or my dad used to listen to that. That's kind of strange. But history, we think of it as just something of old people, but we're studying the same history that many of them studied when they weren't old and they were alive. So I think that's kind of cool. Okay, Christianity starts early in the Pax Romana. It's a new religion. It starts in this distant corner that was taken over by the Romans in 63 BC. It starts in the same area that most Jewish people lived. Okay. Jesus doesn't start in 63 BC, but the Romans took over Judea in 63 BC. And Jesus, remember, time is going down when it's going from before Christ or before Common Era. So Jesus is going to be about 06, something in there that he's going to start. About the time the empire itself starts. Okay, so let's go. Romans allowed the Jewish people, like we've said, to worship their God. The Jewish people did not like the Romans. Okay? They did not like polytheism. They believed they were God's chosen people. They did not want to be ruled by somebody. And eventually they would revolt against Rome because they believed that a Messiah was coming. It was prophesied in their scriptures, they thought, the way they read their scriptures, that he was coming and he was going to free them from the Romans. That was he must be coming to free us from the Romans so we can elevate the Davidic state back like it was and have everything back to normal. Before they had sinned against God and lost their country. Okay. If you need me to go back, I'll go back. Here is when Jesus is born, 4 BC. You know that in Bethlehem. You've all heard that story. Jesus was a follower of the Jewish law. He lived in obscurity for the first 30 years of his life, where he worked as a carpenter along with his father. Common man. He began preaching to villagers with parables and simple moral lessons for the 3 years prior to his death and resurrection. So in only 3 years, which is kind of remarkable, he accomplishes a movement that changes the world. He, in the process, develops 12 key disciples. He actually had hundreds of disciples, maybe more than that, at least 500 we know of at the time. But he had 12 who were just apostles. Of these 12, one was Judas, and Judas will later commit suicide after he's paid silver for betraying Jesus. As a result, another apostle, and I believe it's Matthias. Do you remember Matthias in when you read the stuff about the apostles and how they died? Matthias is one of them. Okay, so Matthias, I'll come up with some kind of matching quiz for you next week on that. Okay, but Matthias replaced Judas, so there were 12 disciples, and those 12 disciples went on to spread the gospel throughout the world. And most of them died as a result of the work they were doing. Some Jews in Jerusalem welcomed Jesus. Many of the priests were threatened by him because he threatened they thought he was threatening their place and their power in the church because he was threatening their place and their power in the church. But not by taking their positions away. He was threatening it by saying, this is not the way that God has called us to live. He was requiring more of the people and calling them on the carpet for their hypocrisy. Next, the Roman authorities were frightened of Jesus because they were frightened of anybody who thought they were a king, because the possibility of another king was a threat to Caesar. You remember in one of the times the Pharisees, these two concepts come together. The Pharisees come to try to trick Jesus, and they give him a coin, and they said, who do we, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? And they were doing that because they were trying to get Jesus to say Caesar was king, because if he said Caesar was king, then they could say, ha ha, it's idolatry. They could catch him there. But if he said he's not king, it's not lawful, then the Roman authorities were going to be mad at him. So they were trying to get him in between two problems. Either the priest, mad by the priest, angered by the priests, or angered by the Romans, angering the Romans. So he was sitting there. He said, give me a coin. Have you heard this story? This is so good. You guys got to read the Bible more. Okay, he asked for a coin. Okay, and that coin he looked at the coin and he said, who's on this coin? Do you think Jesus knew who was on the coin? Think he'd ever seen a coin before in 30 years? He knew who was on the coin. He said, who's on this coin? And they said, that's Caesar. And he said, well, then you give to Caesar what's Caesar's and give to God what's God's. And he just walked right out of their grasp. They were really upset about that. And he used logic better than anybody I have ever read about or known. But he never taught a lesson on logic. But he used it. He was brilliant. Jesus was really smart. Okay? So, anyway, but that's just an example of the two powers in Rome and Judea of the day were the Jewish priests and the Roman authorities. Chief amongst whom was Pilate. But all of the Roman authorities were under Caesar. He was the primary Roman power. Many Jews began to believe in the Messiah, that the Messiah was going to come and separate them from Rome and give the Davidic kingdom back to them. I'm not an Old Testament expert, so if they wanted something other than the Davidic kingdom, that's okay. What they did want is to be free from Roman rule and be able to rule themselves. Right? Jesus came to free us from dominion from the flesh and free us into the freedom and power of the Spirit. I came to give life and life more abundantly. He had a different kingdom in mind than just another Jewish kingdom free from Roman control. He wanted a spiritual kingdom free from the control of the flesh. Freedom from evil, if you want it. That's why you should have read the Old Testament and you should have read the New Testament by now, okay? If someone tells you that they are the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me, what are the alternatives with that statement? You're a lawyer and someone tells you that. What are you going to think? There's three alternatives. Can you think what they are? If Gabby came up to you tomorrow and said, I am the way and the truth and the life, and you must follow me to get to heaven, what three questions would you think? What would you think were three possibilities that might be influencing Gabby?
Drugs.
Okay, that's a modern day. Okay, like drugs, could be on drugs, could be. Here's the three. Okay, what? She could either be crazy, or she could be lying, right? Or she could be telling the truth. Do you think it would be important for you to know the answer to that? Do you? Because what if she's telling the truth? If she's just crazy or lying, well, like, welcome to the club, right? But if she's telling the truth, we better be paying attention. That's why, even if you're not a Christian believer, because of that single statement from Jesus, you better know if it's true or not. You better spend some time knowing if it's true or not, because there might be ramifications of that. So Jesus came saying he was the Messiah and that he was here, but he wasn't here to give them a kingdom back. He came with a different kingdom. his kingdom was not on earth. His kingdom was in heaven. Okay? So to separate us from the flesh, from the dictates and control, and give us freedom. He was a Jew from Nazareth, and from age 30 to 33, he preached this message throughout the world, throughout his area. He didn't go anywhere close to the distance that Paul went. He stayed in Judea. Urged his followers to turn away from sin. Some people oversimplify this. I think sin is really the power to control, captivate you to the things of this world, to get your satisfaction from success, or satisfaction from relationships, or satisfaction from how much money you have, or how much you know, or how smart you are, or how good you look before other people. And Jesus came to say, no, none of that is going to matter at all. He honored the one who gave the most, was the widow that gave 1 penny. Okay? But she gave more of what she had than the rich people who gave thousands of pennies. He came to challenge what the world thought about what was true and what was false and what worked and what didn't and what was successful, what caused success and what caused failure. If you repent, just means change your mind. Stop pursuing things external to have internal peace, and start pursuing things internal to have external peace. It's exactly the opposite of Caesar. Okay. Fear of his ability to arouse such feelings in the people led Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Palestine, to arrest Jesus and ordered that he be crucified. We're going to read that story. Can you guys call up a Bible that you like, a version of the Bible that you like on your computers, please, and go to John, the Gospel of John 18 and 19. If you don't have your computer, you can look onto one of your classmates. Can you do that right now? You got 1 minute.
Which one are you going to?
You're going to go to John, any version you like, although there are superior ones like the New American Standard. But you can go to NIV if you really have to. Okay. There's also the King James and the KJV. Those are very good. And KJV. John 18. And my computer went off again. No, it's on. It's just TV's off. Why is the TV off? Did it turn off? It may have. Did it shut off? It must have. Just click that little thing there. Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you. There we go. Technology, it's a beautiful thing, and it's a big pain at the same time. Okay? Okay, who's got it? Who's got the scripture up? You got it? Can you read the first couple paragraphs for me, Sophia? And I'm going to stop you because I'm going to point out certain things as you go. And I'm just going to listen. Go ahead.
When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the valley. On the other side there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came into the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said, and Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them,
Stop. Why would they draw back and fall to the ground? Well, think, this is a Roman guards and Jewish guards and chief priests. These are like the police in the military. Can you close your computer right now? Okay, I don't know what you're laughing about.
I'm not laughing. Street.
Huh?
I'm not laughing.
What was funny about that?
I was laughing.
Listen, but Jesus, just saying, I am He. What's He saying? You know why I am is important? The words I am, have you heard this? We're going to stop doing history and we're just going to do Bible the rest of the year.
Cool.
Why is I am important? The Pharisees came to Jesus and challenged Him about what He was teaching. And they said, we're not going to listen to you. We're following Moses. Moses is our leader. Okay? And He said to them at this time, and this is when they really started hating Him. He said, before Moses was, I am. You remember where I am first appeared in the Bible? This is... No, He said, I'm the way, the truth, and life. But I am, the term I am, became the symbol of God. And it's what God told Moses at the burning bush. Because God told Moses He wants him to deliver Israel. And He's going to say, and He says, well, who am I supposed to? I mean, He didn't want to deliver Israel. He didn't know how He was going to do that. He said, what am I supposed to tell him? Who am I supposed to say sent me? And He said, tell him, I am sent you. I am. That's how He referred to it. And I used to think that's kind of weird. Why would God say I am to define who He was? But you know, that is the first law of logic. The first law of logic is called the law of identity. And it's basically, it says a thing is what it is. And it's saying that all of reality is composed of a diversity of particular things. And so when you say a thing is what it is, a cat is a cat. Okay? He's using the first law of logic to define who He was, and logic is the foundation of definition, so it's very logical. And He said, I have always been. Don't tell him anything, but tell him I am sent you. That's pretty amazing. I am, and He was using logic, and He was using Jewish customs, but it was a powerful statement. And in the time of Jesus, from then on, that became, that I am, which was given to Moses, became holy words. You just didn't say it. It was only for God to say it. And Jesus said, before Abraham and before Moses, I am. And He basically was saying He was God, which He did say many times. Okay? So, the high priests and the Pharisees, I think they picked up rocks to stone Him with it at that time. Or He may have just left and got away and escaped. I can't remember exactly. There was a number of times they picked up rocks to stone Him, and He just kind of escaped through the crowd. But when He said, I am, He was saying He was God. Okay? This really angered the Jews. And when He said, I am, when they came to get Him, He was saying, I am He. That's pretty powerful. He's not just saying, I am Jesus, when He says that I am He. He's saying, I am. And that power of God dropped them to their knees, even though they didn't want it. It says all knees will bow, and every tongue will confess. Some of that will be against their will, probably. Okay? Often, maybe. Hopefully not very many. Okay? But I am is powerful. Isn't that cool? I hope you like that. Jesus said, I am, and they all fell to the ground. Can you continue reading, Sophia?
Again He asked them, who is it you want? Jesus of Nazareth, they said. Jesus answered, I told you that I am He. If you are looking for me, then let these men go. This happened so that the words He had spoken would be fulfilled. I have not lost one of those you gave me. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. Jesus commanded...
Go ahead, keep going. This is very interesting.
Jesus commanded Peter, put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound Him and brought Him first to... In other Gospels, Jesus picks up the ear and heals him.
puts the ear back on. So Peter cuts the ear off and Jesus puts it back on. Peter resists the empire. Jesus resists the flesh. Okay? And he puts that ear back on him and then tells Peter, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Okay, so he's teaching all the time. He's already teaching. This experience will never leave Peter's mind. Okay? And it shouldn't leave ours. It should captivate our imagination. Okay, keep going.
They bound him and brought him first to this place that I can't pronounce, who was the father of the high priest that year. The high priest was the one who had advised the Jewish leaders that it would be good if one man died for the people. Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Because this disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard, but Peter had to wait outside the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back and spoke to the servant girl on duty there and brought Peter in. You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you? She asked Peter. He replied, I'm not. It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around a fire they had made to keep warm. Peter was also standing with them, warming himself. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teachings. I have spoken openly to the world, Jesus replied. I have always taught in synagogues or at the temple, where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said. When Jesus said this, one of the officials nearby slapped him in the face. Is this the way you answer the high priest? He demanded. If I said something wrong, Jesus replied, testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me?
Can you stop it? Just stop right there. Jesus always spoke the truth. He, today, with all the things going on, you're often ostracized and condemned for telling the truth, for speaking the truth. Jesus would offend a lot of people today. He would probably offend a lot of people who think he wouldn't offend them. Okay, he tended to be an equal opportunity at offending people for error, for not being truthful. But he came right back at him. A lot of people think Jesus turning the other cheek didn't mean not calling them to account for what they just did. What did he say? He said, what did I say wrong? What did I say that wasn't truthful, right? Okay? So he stood his ground. He just didn't use his sword to defend himself. Keep going. We're going to get through 18 with you, Sophia.
Meanwhile, Simon Peter was still standing there warming himself. So they asked him, oh wait, this is...
Keep going. You're doing good.
Same?
You're
Oh
doing
wait,
good.
she's asking him again. So they asked him, you aren't one of his disciples too, are you? He denied it, saying, I'm not. One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him. Didn't I see you with him in the garden? Again, Peter denied it, and at that moment, a rooster began to crow.
Okay, now, Jesus told Peter, before this day's over, you will betray me 3 times. He said, before a rooster crows today, you will betray me 3 times. And that he did it. And Peter said, no, I'll never betray you. I'm loyal to you. And before the rooster crowed, he betrayed him 3 times. Peter was really broken. Okay? Peter had to be broken. He had to come to the end of himself for God to use him. He broke him in many ways. Not just this time. He did many other things to break him down. But Peter tended to do first and think about it later. Anybody ever act first and think about it later? Peter did that too. Peter was a little more prone to that, at least what we know, than the other disciples. And this broke his heart because now he realized suddenly the crow crowed and he remembered what Jesus said. And it broke his heart. Because he had denied Jesus 3 times. So even the best of us get broken by that. And we fail. Fail God, we fail each other, we fail everybody. But we can all learn from it too. Peter had some redemption, didn't he? So now, Katie, could you read 19 for me?
Mm-hmm. All of it?
Let's start. Start off. I want to make sure I'm at the right place. Okay. Pilate. It's called Pilate, okay? Pontius Pilate.
Pilate then took Jesus and scourged him. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns.
Okay, no, I didn't. I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. Go back to 18. Sophia, I want to go back to where they bring Jesus to Pilate. Before Pilate? Yeah. Does that say before Pilate?
Yeah.
Okay, so there we are. We're Jesus before Pilate. This is so important, you guys, because it really demonstrates the conflict between Christ and Caesar. Go ahead.
Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from the high priest to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace, because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die.
So Pilate says, "Look, I can't find anything wrong with this guy. Why are you bringing him to me?" And they're using the Roman government to do their dirty work. The Jewish priests hated the Romans. That's an important thing to know. They hated them because they thought they were everything that was wrong with the world was centered in Rome. But they hated Jesus more because they were willing to ally with Rome to get rid of Jesus. The Romans didn't hate the Jews, they just wished they would stop causing problems. They just wanted them to get with the swing, pay their taxes, keep their mouths closed, and go through life. And he's coming out exasperated. "Why am I dealing with this man? This is not a problem. You're bringing this man to me. They can't execute anybody." So what do they say? Where do they go when he asks them that? Can you read on?
Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied.
What's Pilate saying there?
Did others talk to you about?
What's Pilate saying?
He's saying that
He's answering Jesus directly, but he's doing it because he knows he's got assumptions behind it. He's saying, "Am I a Jew? Of course somebody told me about this. I don't know any of this stuff," right? That Jesus, so he that's how he's answering them. This is written. This is not written. It's one of the reasons the Gospels are so amazing. Okay, it's because if you were going to write Gospels to prove to somebody that a particular God you like is the real God, it wouldn't come out. This comes out so normal and so natural, like people really would have talked in the day. And the more you know about literature, the more you can see that. So, but he's saying, of course the Jews told me. I don't know anything about the Jewish religion, so go ahead, read on.
"Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it that you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom..."
Now, listen, what did he do? What would the Romans consider worthy of death? What do you think the Romans? Think about Roman law. What would Roman law determine as worthy of death?
People maybe like tax fraud of some sort.
Could be really heavy tax fraud, okay? It could be
Yeah.
stealing and theft. I'm sure they were really harsh to theft. But there's one other thing that's really important too. Affecting the stability of Rome, causing chaos, order, killing somebody. threatening the power of the emperor. These are big things. What he's basically saying is, what have you done wrong? Why do they want you to be executed? Why don't I know about it if you've done this great thing wrong? He is completely perplexed. In other Gospels, they say that his wife, Pilate's wife, came to him and said, leave this man alone. This is going to be a problem for you. Okay? But he didn't listen. He couldn't because he was stuck between two bad spots too. He couldn't be said that he was for someone who was against the emperor. He couldn't do that. So he was stuck in the middle too. Everyone gets stuck in the middle. All of us get stuck in the middle between truth and error sometimes because doing the right thing will not benefit us. And then we have to decide, are we more interested in being benefited or are we more interested in doing the right thing? Everyone has that happen. And today it's probably going to happen more. Okay, just be aware that's possible. Okay, thank you. You're doing such a good job, Sophia. Can you continue?
Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place. You are a king then, said Pilate. Jesus answered, you say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into this world is to testify the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me. What is truth?
Do we read that way too fast? What's Jesus just say about everyone who's on the side of the truth?
They listen to him.
They listen, don't they? And then what does Pilate say?
What is truth?
So Pilate must not be listening, right? What do you think they're listening with, the people who know the truth?
Ears.
Their heart. They're listening with their heart. Jesus would say, have ears to hear. He's the ears of the heart. Pilate's stuck in this world. He's stuck in a cynical world. He's a cynical man in a cynical world seeking power and success. And that many cynical people have said the same thing. He's echoing the word of cynicism and saying, what is truth? Come on, give me a break. So that's a powerful statement showing you the difference between the Roman and the Jew